Does the train only pass once?
Welcome to the 2Gether4Victims podcast.
A journey through abundance, plunge and shadow, to new understandings, heights and depths, unexpected discoveries or recoveries.
A journey by train around Europe through the complexities of coordinating and harmonising support services for victims of gender-based violence. This podcast is focused on the latest developments in the field of gender-based violence services in the European Union. This journey, shaped by Victim Support Europe, the leading European organisation advocating for the rights and services of all crime victims, explores how 11 partner organisations in the 2Gether4Victims project are working together with one goal: improving services for victims of gender-based and domestic violence. Along the way, we'll examine their current efforts and how these actions are paving the way for harmonised, gendered support services for victims across Europe. Our 2Gether4Victims podcast takes listeners on a rail journey through 7 countries: Belgium, Croatia, Cyprus, France, Lithuania, the Netherlands, and Portugal. And the journey doesn't end there. It will cross even more borders.
If you work with victims of crime, have been a victim yourself, or know someone who has, please find your seat. You'll learn about the latest advancements in victims' rights across Europe.
Our podcast train is funded by the SERVE programme of the European Commission, co-funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are however those of the authors only and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the European Commission. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them. Welcome to our episode, Collaborative Support for Domestic Violence Survivors in the Workplace. In this episode, we'll explore how different entities, including victim support services, NGOs, government agencies and companies, are joining forces to support women affected by domestic violence in the workplace. We'll gain insights from EU-funded projects that demonstrate the importance of collaboration in developing effective support plans for survivors. You'll also discover innovative ideas and free resources that empower professionals, researchers, and organisations to enhance their support for survivors. Our goal is to inspire meaningful actions that make workplaces safer and more compassionate for women who have experienced domestic violence. Our main character is Aine, an independent podcaster, sound artist, and a survivor of domestic abuse. Aine is a European citizen with Irish, Polish, and Italian roots, and she sees herself as a world citizen, embracing diverse cultures and experiences, though without forgetting where she comes from. Through sound, she explores social structures, personal histories, and the unconscious imagination of individuals. Travelling by train across Europe, her goal? To investigate best practices and initiatives that support vulnerable populations, all with the aim of making the world a better place.
3, 2, 1, started. My train pulls slowly into Malaga, the heart of the Costa del Sol and birthplace of Picasso. Malaga is best known internationally for its beautiful weather, and it's true, the sun blinds me as I step off the train, walking straight into the warm yellow sunshine. The air has its own charm here too. The scent of orange trees fills the street, a fragrant welcome that's unmistakably Andalusian. I'm on my way to meet Gigi Guizzo at Rinova, Malaga, a learning and development company focused on social and cultural innovation. Gigi's impressive. She's been managing EU projects for over a decade, covering everything from lifelong learning to LGBTQI and gender equality. She's fluent in 6 languages, and her background spans art history to social media strategies and even tackling cyber discrimination. Gigi's experience with Rinova centres around creating real, positive change. Today, through her insights, I'm hoping to understand the unique challenges domestic violence survivors face, particularly in the workplace. Her work highlights the urgent need for safe, supportive environments, and through her story, she's inspiring us all to take action, to make workplaces not just safer, but truly inclusive for everyone. Thanks for having me here today, Gigi. The walk along Malaga's coastline to your office was stunning. The Mediterranean glistening under the sun, the air filled with the scent of oranges. It's such a peaceful setting, but it contrasts with the important and challenging work you do here.
Yeah, sure.
To get us started, could you introduce yourself, share about your name, your job title, and what brought you to this work?
So my name is Gigi Guizzo. I work for an organization, a social enterprise called Rinova. I work as development manager in primarily in European projects for over 10 years, or more than 10 years now, in projects around fundamental rights. The reason I'm here today is projects around gender-related violence. So not only violence against women, but LGBT people and but in the widest sense, an intersectional approach. To Victor Support Europe and conferences, I've always come with a specific topic close to my heart, which is domestic violence against women and how we can tackle it from the company or from the workplace.
Thank you for that introduction, Gigi. To begin our discussion, could you reflect on your personal journey and what inspired you to focus on initiatives that support individuals who have experienced domestic violence, particularly in the workplace?
Yes. Well, back in 2016, I was working on a project that was called CARV, and it was specifically hoping to involve companies to become more active in supporting women who are in situations of domestic violence. And at the beginning of the project, we did some interviews to get to know the organizations and companies around us in our location. I live in Spain, and I was struck by how many experiences people brought forward of having had colleagues who may have gone through a situation, but they never found out if it really was. And the other thing that I was struck by is interviewing two women from an NGO specialized in supporting women, with about 200 staff, only women, when asking them what strategy and plan they had in place to support the women in their organization who might be victims of domestic violence. They didn't have a strategy. So when interviewing two women from an NGO in Spain who work with women and support women who may be suffering domestic violence or other forms of violence, and asking them about what strategy they had in place in their own organization about supporting women in their own organization who might be going through a situation of domestic violence, it was surprising that they didn't have a strategy. And this is an organization who, at the time when I interviewed them, had 20 years experience, 200 women. So roughly, yeah, I'm generalizing. But what I found striking there is if we look at the statistics that 1 in 5 women experience at some point in their life intimate partner violence, it is unthinkable that in 200 women over 20 years there has not been a single woman who might have needed that support. So back in 2016, as I say, it struck me that this project was very much needed. And ever since, I've been sort of doing activism around it through different projects.
Wow, Gigi, that's really eye-opening. It's hard to believe that even an organisation dedicated to supporting women didn't have a strategy in place for those facing domestic violence. Your experience really underscores how vital it is to raise awareness and create resources for those in need. So speaking of collaboration, you mentioned working with a variety of groups like victim support organisations, charities, government agencies, even businesses. Can you share how these partnerships have helped you provide better support for survivors of domestic violence?
Yes. Preparing for this interview today, I was trying to think of specific examples because, of course, otherwise I'll be waffling about generic, what could one do, and collaboration in general. But I struggled to think what I could offer European-wide because every country is different. And then even beyond that, in the countries, every region is different, every urban or rural area is different. So one has to really look in each context what can be done. But I thought I'd bring an example. So one of the organizations I really like is a foundation called Rinova Foundation in Spain. And Rinova is a survivor of domestic violence itself, who has created a network of survivors, of women survivors, who support each other. But apart from the Women's Survivor Network, what she has created is a program of domestic violence survivors who, through big companies like Danone, Benefit Cosmetics, really big companies, become a brand manager. So they become the face of the company. And of course, this is only possible through a series of collaborations. So in the first place, the NGO collaborates with government services who refer the women to them. They have a whole system and structure of help for housing, for childcare, for training for the women. They have a school, so on and so forth. And then they have the network, the connection with the companies who offer jobs to the women. So these collaborations give really a holistic support to the women and make then the job and the future life after exiting the violence possible in the long term.
Oof. That's such a powerful example, Gigi. The Annabella Foundation's approach to creating a network of support among survivors is really inspiring. It's clear that those collaborations really help women regain stability and build a future after experiencing violence. Shifting gears a bit, what are some of the unique challenges that domestic violence survivors face in the workplace? And how have you and your collaborators tackled these issues?
Well, there are many different ones. I think what I would like to mention here is the way women who suffer domestic violence react at the workplace can be very different. There can be either overworking, spending more time than usual at work because it's the only space where they are safe, or it can be not coming to work, so absenteeism because of violence, bruises that they experience physically or mentally at home and not being able to come to work. So both create challenges in the sense of stress to, of course, themselves, but also to their surroundings, so their colleagues. People usually pick up on it at some level, and this creates a stressful environment. So overcoming these challenges is, of course, difficult in all sorts of levels, but coming always back to this workplace angle, one important difficulties that women who suffer domestic violence encounter at work is either they overwork because they want to be away from home and be in a safe space, or they have absenteeism because of mental or physical bruises. So in both cases, this creates stress, of course, for themselves and for the people around them sometimes, and it creates a stressful work environment. So what that then leads or can lead to is actually loss of work eventually. And that is one of the things that we're really trying to campaign against, is that companies can offer support in having in watching out, if you so want, and then being creating a space where the victim can come forward and ask for help to the company. And that really should be the way forward.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights, Gigi. It's important to recognise how differently survivors can react in the workplace, whether it's by overworking to find a sense of safety or facing absenteeism due to the impacts of violence. Addressing these challenges is crucial not just for the individuals, but for creating a healthier work environment overall. I think I'll be thinking about this for a while. Can you highlight any specific initiatives or strategies that have been effective in creating safer and more supportive environments for domestic violence survivors in the workplace?
Yes. So one specific project, as I say, it's a while back. It was the CARF project. We did a poster, which I still recommend. It's from 2016, but it has some basic steps, 5 steps that are interconnected that companies can take or should take or should take into consideration to take if they want to become active, which I would highly recommend. So that the 5 points are not necessarily in that order. One is to create a policy and a plan and strategy in the company. So how do I do that? Some initial research of what there is in my context is important. So what NGOs are there in my context who could give me support, training, so on. What national legal framework, etc. Then, of course, staff training. So this is really crucial. People need to be trained. They need to be experts in the company to know how to implement that. Then there need to be some internal channels All these things are, of course, part usually anyway of human resources activities around equality plans. So this shouldn't come as a totally new thing, but it's just thinking in those equality plans also around domestic violence, not just about violence in the workplace. Then once these things are in place, it's raising awareness that the company is open to, and then of course engage and collaborate actively with expert organizations in one's surroundings. So that's really the crucial one, I would say. So companies or staff in companies should not feel that they can be first responders. So if somebody comes to me, and since I've been campaigning around this, more and more people have come forward to me. And I'm always careful to not feel that I am the expert who can advise them what to do, because I'm not a trained psychologist, I'm not a trained victim support force responder. So what I need to know is who to refer them to, be of course open to listen if I can, and have also the space to have boundaries if I need to.
I appreciate you outlining those key steps, Gigi. It's clear that creating a structured approach through policy, training, and collaboration is vital for companies wanting to support domestic violence survivors. Your emphasis on awareness and knowing when to refer individuals to experts highlights the importance of a well-rounded strategy. Looking ahead, how do you envision the future of workplace support for domestic violence survivors? And what role do you believe collaborative efforts will play in achieving this vision?
I think in the present, some great steps have been made over the last few years. Across Europe, through European policies, I think we see more and more in different countries, companies being encouraged by the government, by national laws, to actually have equality plans that include gender-related violence prevention. They, of course, focus more usually on the workplace, but there is a space there, I think, to include violence in the private sphere, which is absolutely needed. As I say, I think it's something that doesn't stay in the private sphere, but it carries over to the workplace. I think there's definitely space there, and there's strides being made. And actually today we heard from Terry Nicholson, from international security expert, that what was she saying? Collaboration means success. And I think that's definitely the way forward for domestic violence victim support, to make sure that they get that support at the company. And I would like to add here, which we've heard today at the conference a lot, is two things. One, that NGOs should be sought for giving support, helping. But we've also heard that many of them experiences 20-25% cuts to funding. So I think here is a great opportunity for companies to actually give back and not just ask for the help from NGOs, but actually to create collaborations where the companies pay for training, pay for services, pay for NGOs to actually come into the company and help them with their plans, which also already happens. So this is not something I'm making up, but this is something that's happening. But maybe through that and through CSR in companies, help also give some funding back to organizations who actually then can help victims.
Thank you for sharing those insights, Gigi. I'm encouraged to hear about the progress being made in European policies and the importance of incorporating support for domestic violence into workplace equality plans. Your point about the need for collaboration, especially when NGOs are facing funding cuts, it just highlights a critical opportunity for companies to step in and support these organizations while also benefiting their own employees. For my final question, what advice would you give to individuals and organizations looking to take proactive steps in supporting domestic violence survivors in their workplace?
As I mentioned before, I think first of all, do the basic research of what's around me. So in my local context, who is there active in domestic violence support? What helplines exist? What national government support exists? Look also at unions, for example. Many of them have specific gender-related or gender-based violence support services. There's a great starting point to give some basic information. From there on, do some basic training, and then you can start thinking about a plan, a strategy. As a company, you start with a plan. You have to have some staff that is actively engaged in that. If you're an individual in your organization, you can find out what's already in place. And if it isn't, It can be an opportunity to start Equality Commission or start activating something, depending on, of course, the size of the company, on the resources available, and so on. And maybe here I could just mention the different projects that I've been involved in. So there's the Active project, there's a toolkit and a guide for companies. This is a recent project, activeproject.eu, if I don't misremember. Then there's the Carve Daphne project, which has a poster with the 5 steps and also some best practices. And then there's the Seize project, which I wasn't involved in, but colleagues that I know, that also has some ideas for companies. And then the USV React.eu project, which was specifically for universities. So what universities can do to support staff, to support victims of sexual violence, domestic violence.
Thank you for those practical insights, Gigi. It's clear that doing local research and understanding the existing support systems are crucial first steps for organisations. Your suggestions about training and activating equality commissions are empowering for individuals looking to make a difference in their workplaces. It's great to hear about the various projects you've been involved in, as they offer valuable resources for companies to implement effective strategies, benefiting everybody in the workplace. This has been a truly engaging conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with me today. Thank you so much for being here and giving me your time.
Thank you.
Three, 2, 1, started. As the train pulls away from Malaga, I find myself enveloped in a swirl of thoughts. Thankfully, the train isn't too busy today. I have space to reflect on the conversation I just had. The vibrant colours of this coastal city are fading in the distance, but the insights I gained today, they'll stay with me long after I've left. My conversation with Gigi opened my eyes to the urgent need for collaboration in supporting domestic violence survivors in the workplace. It's unsettling to think about how many individuals are silently struggling, perhaps sitting next to us in the office, carrying burdens that often go unseen. Gigi's experience underscored just how vital it is for organisations to recognise their role in creating safe environments. The fact that even a dedicated NGO lacked a strategy for supporting their own staff really highlights a gap we can't ignore. Listening to Gigi detail practical steps, like conducting local research and establishing support networks, given me so much to consider. I'm inspired to know that by simply being aware of our surroundings and the resources available, we can pave the way for meaningful change. The initiatives she mentioned, particularly the ones involving collaborations with companies like Danone, others show how real impact can be made when different entities come together for a common cause. I feel a sense of responsibility now, knowing that I can share this knowledge with my audience and beyond. What can we do in our own communities? How can we elevate these conversations in a way that encourages proactive support for survivors? It's a question that lingers in my mind as I gaze out at the passing landscape. Speeding toward my next destination, I'm filled with a renewed sense of purpose. There's so much work to be done, but if we all take those first steps, even the smallest ones, we can make a difference. The sun may be setting on this beautiful city, but the light of awareness is just beginning to shine.
As Anna continues her journey through Europe on the train, she's filled with anticipation for the new countries and experiences that await her. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of the Together for Victims podcast.
Does the train only pass once?
You're listening to the Together for Victims podcast, focusing on gender-based violence services. This podcast was produced by the Together for Victims project, led by Victim Support Europe in collaboration with 10 partner organisations and funded by the SERVE programme of the European Commission. Thank you very much for listening.
thank you very much for listening.